Have you ever had that feeling of being stagnant? As if everything around you was moving but you were still stuck in the same place? Everyone has experienced this, and it's exactly this feeling that may be preventing you from achieving the change you so desperately want. But what if I told you that there was just one thing you could do right now, to completely change your life? Sometimes we're so focused on the big changes that we forget to notice what really matters. The action we can take right now. Maybe you're waiting for the perfect moment, the ideal circumstance, but guess what? That moment doesn't exist. Life is what happens while we wait for everything to settle down, and the key to getting out of this stagnation lies in a simple but powerful step that you can take today. Think about when you had a great desire to change something, perhaps your job, your relationships, or even your health. But for some reason, the change never happened. You may have hesitated, doubted yourself, or simply been overwhelmed by the magnitude of what you wanted to do. This is common. However, there is one thing that all these situations have in common: the lack of a decisive first step. Imagine you're standing in front of a closed door. You know that on the other side is the life you want, but you hesitate to turn the handle. Perhaps you're afraid of what you'll find or the responsibility that comes with this new life. But the truth is that nothing will happen until you open that door. This is the dilemma that many of us face: knowing what we want, but not taking the first step to get there. So what's the one thing you need to do now? That's what we're going to talk about today. And no, it's not something complicated or requiring a huge transformation. In fact, it's something so simple that we often underestimate its power. But before I tell you exactly what it is, I want you to ask yourself, what is the one thing you most want to change in your life right now? Write in the comments and let us know. This is important because it will help you understand which area of your life is crying out for action. Maybe it's something to do with your career, or maybe it has to do with your relationships or even the way you look after yourself. Regardless of the answer, the crucial point here is to recognize that there is something inside you that wants to change. And the only thing holding you back is the lack of a first step. Now let's take a closer look at this internal conflict. How many times have you felt that you knew exactly what to do, but for some reason you didn't do it? It's as if there's a voice inside your head telling you that it's not the right time, or that you're not ready. This voice is actually what we call the comfort zone. It makes you believe that it's safer to stay where you are, but at the same time, it's what stands in the way of progress. You only need a small movement to break this cycle. It's not about knowing what to do, you probably already know, but about doing what's necessary now. It's natural to feel fear or uncertainty in the face of change. After all, we are programmed to seek comfort and avoid the unknown. But what you may not have realized yet is that your comfort zone isn't really comfortable. It's just familiar. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself complaining about the same thing? I hate my job, but what else can I do? Or, I'd like to feel healthier, but I don't have time to exercise. These excuses seem logical at first glance, but in reality, they're just ways of keeping us where we are without challenging us to do something different. The question is, how long will you allow yourself to stay in this situation? The truth is that living in your comfort zone is like walking in circles. You feel safe because you're in familiar territory, but at the same time you're getting nowhere. This is frustrating, and the worst thing is that the longer you stay in this zone, the harder it becomes to get out of it. It's a vicious cycle, and every day it seems more impossible to break out of it. But here's the key to understanding this cycle. We are often led to believe that in order to change, we need to take a giant leap. However, the most lasting transformations begin with small, consistent steps, and that's exactly where most people get lost. They believe they need to change everything at once, and this causes paralysis. I was a smoker, and I thought that in order to stop my addiction, I had to give up smoking all at once, when in fact, it was the first small changes in my habits that, after 20 years as a smoker, made me stop this terrible addiction. But that's not how things work in reality. Let's use an analogy here to illustrate this more clearly for you. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. Looking at the top, you might feel intimidated thinking about how difficult it will be to reach that point. The idea of getting there in one go seems impossible. But the secret to climbing that mountain is not to focus on the top, it's focusing on the next step. Each small movement brings you closer to your goal, and eventually, without even realizing it, you reach the top. The same goes for any change in life. The first step is all you need right now. And when you think about it like that, the fear of change starts to lose its grip. Instead of worrying about all the steps in the process, you focus only on what you can do right now. It could be something as simple as waking up 15 minutes earlier to have some time to yourself, or starting to meditate for 5 minutes every day, or how I beat my addiction to cigarettes. The important thing is to take the first step, and the rest will follow naturally. But why is it so difficult to do this? The problem is not change itself, but our relationship with the idea of change. Most people associate change with sacrifice, pain, or discomfort. But what if we started to see change as an opportunity to grow, to discover new possibilities, to free ourselves from patterns that no longer serve us? The perspective I'm proposing here is that you stop seeing change as something scary and start seeing it as something liberating. After all, what's worse? Continuing to live dissatisfied with what you have, or facing the temporary discomfort of leaving your comfort zone and achieving something better? Now you might be thinking, okay, I get the concept, but how does it apply to my life? Let's think of some practical examples. If you want to change careers, you don't have to resign tomorrow, but you can start researching other areas that interest you. You could sign up for an online course or even start talking to people who are already in the career you want. The important thing is to start. One small step could be all you need to create a movement. If your challenge is to improve your health, you don't have to become a fitness person overnight, but you can start changing small habits such as drinking more water or including more fruit in your diet. Again, the focus is on small, consistent actions. That's what makes the difference in the long run. Another example. Perhaps you're struggling to find a purpose in life. This is a common issue, especially among young adults. The feeling of being lost without a clear path can be overwhelming. But you don't need to have everything sorted out right now. What you do need is to start exploring your passions, your curiosities. Take a step towards something that interests you, even if you're not sure where it will take you. The answer will come with time. Now, change is starting to seem more accessible, right? That's because the turning point lies in realizing that action is more important than the immediate result. Many people give up before they start because they want to see quick results, but it's consistency that generates lasting results. Remember, the top of the mountain may seem far away, but what matters is the next step. As we move on to the next part of the video, I want you to think about what the next step is that you can take. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be now. Now that you've understood the importance of the first step, it's time to talk about resolution. What happens when you decide to act? When you finally break out of your state of stagnation and choose to move? The answer is simple, but transformative. Change starts to happen naturally. The culmination of our reflection is the understanding that the act of doing something, however small, creates a chain reaction. This is called the domino effect. That small gesture you made today, whether it was waking up earlier, researching a new career, or even changing your eating habits, triggers a series of other behaviors and attitudes. And suddenly, what once seemed impossible now seems totally feasible. When you take the first step, your perspective changes. Instead of focusing on what's wrong, you start to see the possibilities. You allow yourself to experiment, fail, learn, and try again. The important thing here is not to get hung up on the idea of perfection. Nobody has to get everything right first time. Let's go back to the mountain analogy. Once you've started climbing, each step gives you a different view. The path that seemed so daunting at the beginning is now just part of your process. You start to see the journey differently, not as something impossible, but as a set of small challenges that you can overcome. People often believe that big transformations happen all at once in one great moment of epiphany, but the reality is that they happen slowly, day by day, action by action. The good news is that you don't have to wait for a big moment. You can start now, and your change process will already be underway. You don't have to wait for the weekend, the end of the month, or the end of the year. The secret to making this work in a practical way is to maintain consistency. It's not about doing something big once, it's about doing something small repeatedly. And that brings us to the practical impact this can have on your life. When you start acting consistently, you create a new reality for yourself. A job that once seemed unbearable can turn into an opportunity for personal growth, just because you decided that you were going to learn something new every day. A life that once seemed disorganized now begins to gain structure because you've implemented small habits that make a difference. And most importantly, you start to believe in yourself more. Every time you do something, no matter how small, you are sending a message to your brain. I am capable of change. And this belief in your own ability is what will carry you forward, even when challenges arise. Because yes, the challenges will come. There will be moments of discouragement, moments when you want to give up. But if you remember that it all started with a small, consistent step, you'll realize that you have the power to keep going, no matter what. Now we've reached the end of this journey together, and the final message I want to leave you with is simple. Don't wait for a big moment to change everything. Don't wait for a sign, for a perfect opportunity, or for an event that will transform your life overnight. That rarely happens. What you really need is to take the first step and then keep going. You don't need to know every detail of the path or have everything planned out. The important thing is to start. Right now, ask yourself, what is the one thing I can do today that will take me one step closer to what I want? It doesn't matter how small it is. What matters is that you do it. Because once you start, everything will start to change. And your life will never be the same again. So the final action I encourage you to take is, do something now. Don't wait until tomorrow, until next week, or until next year. Start now. And if you need a reminder or support during this journey, come back and watch this video again. We're in this together. If you enjoyed this content and want to continue this journey of self-discovery and change, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share your stories with us in the comments. We'd love to hear what you did today to take your first step.